The Nameless Echo. From chaos, shadows awaken.
The shift gong echoes through Hive Tertius as Medici orderly Caney begins his morning rounds in Ward Gamma 7. Antiseptic vapor mingles with industrial dust. Fluorescent panels cast pallid light across rows of occupied cots. His data slate bears yesterday's mortality statistics in neat columns. Today's census begins with practiced efficiency. Bed 23. Jorik Vass, factory worker, age 34. Productivity quotient, 0.62. 4 augmetic ports along his spine weep infection, where crude Imperial-grade cybernetics interface with flesh. Machine oil and pus create a distinctive odor that marks the chronically augmented. Vass grips Caney's sleeve with trembling prosthetic fingers. Please, orderly. Release me to the Emperor's peace. No more fixing. Caney marks the request. Third petition this week. Standard documentation. The treatment algorithm reads, repairable asset. Debridement cycle authorized. Analgesia contraindicated pending spiritual merit assessment. Vass signs form Med Delta 41 with shaking hands, knowing the protocol. Fixing is service. Service is life. Bed 41. Unnamed child, approximately 8 years old, severe nutrient deficiency, bones visible beneath translucent skin, eyes too large for his skull. His parents kneel beside the cot, hab workers from Tertius down, faces permanently stained with industrial particulate. They do not request better rations. They know better. Accelerated processing, the mother whispers. For the Emperor's work, we beg it. Caney notes their compliance record. Mother missed 2 devotion shifts. Father has pending audit. 19 children queue ahead. 4 synth protein vials remain in stock. He stamps, processing delayed, schedules devotional interview, offers pamphlet titled Merit Through Hunger. Bed 67. Matron Hess, age 61, respiratory failure from textile processing. More tube than woman now, tethered to failing life support. She has disconnected her breathing apparatus 3 times this shift. The chart reads, patient non-compliance, routine. Caney reattaches the tubing to paper-thin skin, whispers standard catechism, endure and be made worthy. Her age utility curve projects 0 productive years remaining. None of this represents system failure. These are documented procedures, routine responses to Imperial medical intervention. The ward operates under strict resource matrices, productivity algorithms, age utility calculations, spiritual purity assessments. Healing is rationed commodity, distributed according to measurable Imperial value. The pattern emerges from morning documentation. Imperial citizens consistently choose death over the Imperium's medical interventions. Why do they beg for endings instead of cures? The answer lies in understanding what we term healing taxes, hidden costs that make survival worse than cessation. Every medical intervention carries obligations, confession quotas, work levy extensions, servitor risk assessments, family debt inheritance. To comprehend, this phenomenon requires examining the Imperium's foundational approach to human value and bodily autonomy. In the next chamber, doctrines are written in steel and flesh. Imperial medical doctrine emerges from 2 theological altars, the Omnissiah's cold logic and the Ecclesiarchy's purifying flame. Between them, the human body is adjudged defective imperial property, lent to citizens for use until failure demands maintenance or repurposing. The Adeptus Mechanicus provides the mechanical framework. Flesh is weakness requiring governance through steel and protocol. Medical scholars teach anatomy using industrial terminology, cardiovascular circulation systems, respiratory atmospheric processes, neural command networks. Students learn tolerance specifications and failure rates as if calibrating engine components. The proper patient functions as biological machinery, measurable, repairable, replaceable when cost efficiency calculations demand it. Tech adepts audit every milliliter of anesthetic. Each dose must justify projected productivity increases. Pain management becomes resource allocation problem. Numbing agents represent potential inefficiency. Doctrinal hazard. Systemic weakness. Consciousness during procedures ensures proper machine feedback. The Omnissiah's servants measure suffering in data streams, not screams. The ecclesiarchy furnishes spiritual meaning to mechanical brutality. Cardinal Voss's Meditations on Corporeal Weakness remains required reading in every Imperial Medical Academy. Suffering purifies, endurance purchases worth. Pain that dulls through artificial comfort represents stolen redemption, theft from the Emperor's ledger of human merit. Chaplains pace surgical theatres reciting litanies while scalpels work, binding physiology to theology through synchronized agony. These doctrines synthesize into 3 operational principles governing imperial healthcare. First, medical procedures function as penances, opportunities for patients to demonstrate spiritual worthiness through endurance. Treatment protocols incorporate calculated suffering to test faith, while providing minimal healing. Second, pain relief corrupts both practitioner and patient, creating dependency that undermines imperial strength. Comfort breeds weakness. Hardship builds character necessary for imperial service. Third, healing must serve productive capacity above individual welfare, ensuring medical resources support state objectives rather than personal comfort. Medical academies systematically condition future practitioners through progressive desensitization. First-year students observe surgical procedures without anesthesia, learning clinical detachment. Second-year students practice on condemned criminals, developing proper emotional distance. Third-year students master penance calculus, determining when to withhold analgesia, scheduling prayer intervals between debridement cycles, assigning work levies during convalescence. Compassion is taught as professional liability, empathy as corruption, requiring constant vigilance. The Medicae Administratum codifies these principles through algorithmic resource allocation. Facility cogitators run triage calculations across HAB populations using productivity matrices, age utility curves, genetic purity assessments, devotion scores. Medical supplies distribute according to imperial value calculations, not clinical need. Sedative allotments tie to tithe performance. Bandage quotas reflect spiritual compliance records. Scarcity becomes revelation, proof that the emperor tests human worthiness through calculated deprivation. Within this framework emerges therapeutic punishment, medical interventions designed to inflict measured suffering while providing minimal healing. Procedures double as spiritual discipline, treatments constructed to refine compliance through systematic degradation of patient autonomy and dignity. How do these philosophical foundations manifest when steel meets skin? What does therapeutic punishment look like when applied to civilian populations seeking basic medical care? Imperial Medical Protocol. Gamma 7 governs standard civilian treatment across all hive sectors. Its procedures systematically strip comfort, dignity, and hope from healing processes, transforming medical intervention into measured torment designed to strengthen imperial compliance while extracting maximum utility from damaged human assets. Wound debridement follows cleansing rite 23 alpha. Infected tissue requires removal while patients remain fully conscious to participate in their purification. Medici Adept Corvin secures restraints as scalpels begin their work on factory worker Yorick Vass's augmetic ports. No anesthetic appears on treatment authorization. Spiritual merit assessment pending. Productivity quotient insufficient for comfort allocation. The screaming provides necessary feedback. Unconscious subjects cannot demonstrate proper spiritual engagement with their healing. Debridement continues for 47 minutes while chaplains recite purification litanies. Pain spikes are timed with prayer cycles, ensuring synchronized agony and worship. Fracture protocols demand conscious participation in bone realignment. Broken limbs are set while patients experience direct neural feedback from grinding bone fragments. Endure and be made worthy, Medici staff intone, positioning shattered tibias without numbing agents. Post-operative care embeds deliberate discomfort, no cushioning for fractured ribs, minimal splinting for compound breaks, insufficient pain management to prevent character weakness. Recovery demonstrates worthiness through immediate mobilization. Early weight-bearing on newly set bones tests spiritual resilience rather than promoting healing. Chronic conditions receive management through controlled suffering rather than amelioration. Arthritis sufferers endure weekly joint manipulation without relief. Agents building imperial character through systematic inflammation. Respiratory ailments from industrial toxins are treated with irritant inhalants to harden tissue and breath exercises timed to work shifts. Pain medication remains reserved for high-productivity citizens. Civilians learn endurance as their primary therapeutic tool. Augmetic procedures represent therapeutic punishment's purest expression. Crude imperial prosthetics interface with living tissue through conscious surgery, ensuring proper neural integration while providing redemptive suffering. Compatibility testing is doctrinally contraindicated. Rejection responses offer spiritual instruction. Salvaged components cycle between patients, mechanical limbs, optical implants, respiratory apparatus, all sanctified with incense and industrial solvent between uses. Citizens sign reuse consent forms as treatment conditions, accepting contaminated devices with gratitude for imperial mercy. Organ requisition operates under Living Donor Protocol 15, when medical necessity demands fresh biological components. Kidney extraction from conscious subjects ensures organ viability while providing donors opportunity for redemptive service. Hearts, livers, neural tissue, all harvested from living imperial property when cogitator algorithms determine greater utility elsewhere. Donors receive basic life support and work assignments scaled to their reduced capacity. Every medical intervention accrues spiritual and physical obligations extending beyond treatment completion. Medical debt binds recipients to devotional service hours, extended work levies, family liability for resources consumed. Healing becomes burden rather than restoration, creating cascading obligations that transform households into economic calculation units where love expresses itself through strategic medical abandonment. Underground alternatives whisper through hab-block shadows. Back-alley surgeons offering forbidden anesthesia. Unlicensed practitioners providing gentle procedures. Mercy dealers selling dignified endings. These networks operate through coded recommendations, payment in favors rather than currency, trust built on shared desperation for compassionate care. What drives citizens toward these illegal medical networks despite extreme legal penalties? How do families navigate impossible choices between imperial healing and household survival? Imperial healthcare operates through Medicaid resource allocation matrix Gamma Prime, a cogitator-driven system that transforms healing into measurable commodity distributed according to algorithmic worthiness calculations. Medical supplies flow through productivity coefficients that reduce human suffering to numerical values. Factory supervisors rate 0.85, warranting anesthetic allocation during major procedures. HAB workers register 0.40, qualifying for basic wound treatment without pain management. Children under 12 receive provisional ratings pending aptitude assessment. The matrix assigns treatment hierarchies through systematic devaluation. Age utility curves automatically depreciate citizens above 60. Genetic purity modifiers subtract points for visible mutations. Documented bloodline contamination triggers immediate downgrading to expendable status. Spiritual compliance scores factor devotional attendance, confession frequency, work levy performance. The body becomes ledger entry. Healing becomes luxury commodity awarded for demonstrated imperial value. Families navigate these calculations through internal triage protocols that transform households into economic survival units. The Voss family exemplifies standard adaptation. Grandmother Hess voluntarily refuses respiratory treatment to preserve medical credits for productive age members. Father Jorik's augmetic maintenance receives priority over Mother Liana's chronic pain management. Their son Thomas awaits aptitude scoring that will determine his lifetime medical allocation tier. Love expresses itself through strategic abandonment. Sacrifice becomes routine household economics. The medical tithe system compounds these pressures through community-level resource extraction. Each HAB sector must provide monthly quotas. Bandage rolls equivalent to 15% of textile production. Promethium for sterilization units. Volunteer test subjects for experimental procedures. Organ donors from terminal cases. Tithe shortfalls trigger sector-wide medical rationing, creating peer pressure for families to surrender members who consume resources without adequate productivity returns. Medicaid facilities operate under mortality quotas designed to demonstrate proper resource management. Ward Gamma 7 maintains required death rates, 23% for terminal cases, 8% for surgical procedures, 15% for chronic condition management. Excessive patient survival indicates resource waste or doctrinal laxity, triggering administrative audit and staff reassignment. Too high mortality suggests negligence requiring purge and replacement. Administrators learn to hit the numbers precisely. Underground alternatives emerge from this systematic scarcity. Shadow networks operate through coded language. Emperor's Mercy signifies euthanasia services. Gentle treatment indicates anesthetic availability. Family consultation means choosing who receives care. Payment flows in favors, secrets, smuggled gauze, stolen power cells. Back alley practitioners offer what imperial medicine denies: compassionate procedures, pain relief, dignified endings. Mercy killings represent economic compassion within impossible medical calculations. Families commission quietings, illegal euthanasia framed as stewardship acts. Underground practitioners provide alternatives to servitorization for the severely damaged, offering swift endings instead of lobotomized slavery. These services operate through careful trust networks, reputation systems built on successful discretion and shared desperation for forbidden medical humanity. How do families maintain emotional cohesion while conducting these calculated abandonment decisions in their kitchens? What specific underground networks emerge to circumvent official medical rationing systems despite extreme legal penalties? Imperial medical rationing transforms family units into economic calculation engines, where love expresses itself through strategic abandonment. In HAB kitchens across Hive Tertius, account ledgers sit beside devotional candles as households conduct nightly triage, measuring affection against resource allocation matrices. The Keller family exemplifies standard adaptation protocols. Their youngest, Mira, suffers chronic respiratory failure, requiring ongoing medication that would consume 6 months of family medical allocation. Father Davin spreads treatment forms across their metal table, his augmetic maintenance schedule. Pregnant wife Elena's complication protocols, eldest son Marcus's aptitude preparation requirements. The mathematics are stark. Mira's survival means abandoning Eleanor during childbirth or risking Davin's productivity quotient through delayed cybernetic maintenance. They choose accelerated processing for Mira, developing coping rituals, extra prayer sessions, thanking the Emperor for her opportunity to serve through sacrifice, bedtime stories emphasizing honor in early death. Multi-generational households demonstrate systematic medical abandonment through formal council procedures. The Hadrian family votes on resource distribution with clinical precision. Grandfather Vex and grandmother Senna, both requiring extensive treatment, volunteer for dignified conclusion to preserve medical credits for 12 productive age members and children pending aptitude scoring. They conduct last shift suppers, ritualized farewell ceremonies transforming medical abandonment into religious celebration. The elders return their medications to parish collection points, accepting ecclesiarchal benediction for useful relinquishment. Factory worker Jorik Vass's wife Liana represents the third calculation category. Her chronic pain creates cascading medical debt, affecting their children's future allocation tiers. She contacts underground networks through textile worker intermediaries, seeking family consultation services. The black market euthanasia industry operates through reputation systems requiring multiple verification steps. Payment flows in salvaged components, intelligence about medical supply shipments, and testimony supporting false productivity reports. These impossible choices generate elaborate psychological adaptations. Families develop internal languages for discussing abandonment decisions, deferred hope for delayed treatment, graduated service for chosen death, stewardship mathematics for resource calculations. Blue candles mark postponed operations. Grey ribbons signify voluntary relinquishment. Children learn early that affection means accepting survival probability calculations determined by productivity algorithms. Underground alternatives emerge from systematic desperation. Shadow networks communicate through coded graffiti in industrial sectors, religious terminology masking medical services. Mercy dealers specialize in dignified endings using stolen anesthetic supplies. Gentle surgeons provide compassionate procedures through elaborate trust protocols. Family counselors help navigate medical mathematics while preserving emotional bonds. Entry requires textile codes, asking seamstresses for soft thread, leaving bent pins at designated doors, knocking twice and holding. The Black Lace Network operates from converted laundry facilities where former Medici practitioners offer forbidden compassion. Auntie Vale provides what Imperial doctrine withholds: anesthesia, quiet procedures, hands held without catechism. Payment systems function through future favors rather than currency. Lookout duty, bolt cloth promises, access to restricted HAB areas. What specific underground medical networks operate to provide this forbidden compassion? How do shadow healers justify operating outside imperial medical doctrine while risking execution for medical heresy? The clinic hides beneath a laundry in Sector Kell, where steam and lint mask the scent of antiseptic. 3 rooms scrubbed clean by Obsession House salvaged medical equipment, an operating table from a decommissioned hospice, labelled vials in locked cabinets, polished instruments wrapped in boiled cloth. This is where forbidden medicine operates, offering what imperial doctrine denies: compassion, pain relief, and dignified death. Dr. Leanna Voss keeps this sanctuary, once Medici adept 3rd class until witnessing systematic cruelty in pediatric wards drove her to abandon imperial service. Now she practices medical heresy from converted textile storage chambers, providing anesthesia during procedures, gentle wound care, and hands held without catechism. Her ledger records 3 categories of forbidden care: repairs with pain management, chronic suffering alleviated through stolen analgesics, and dignified conclusions for those facing servitorization. Shadow medicine operates through specialized networks across Hive Tertius. Back alley surgeons like Voss handle procedures requiring sedation, hernia repairs, augmetic refittings under true anesthesia, careful debridements. Pain dealers distill tinctures from industrial chemicals, providing relief for textile workers with scorched lungs. Mercy specialists maintain quiet rooms where families bring loved ones scheduled for lobotomization, offering swift endings instead of mindless slavery. The Black Lace Network coordinates these services through elaborate trust systems and coded communication protocols. Payment flows through favor networks rather than currency. Patients provide lookout duty during procedures, smuggle medical supplies from official facilities, offer access to restricted HAB areas, and maintain silence under arbitrator interrogation. Trust operates as the only reliable sterilant. Gatekeepers vet supplicants through seamstress codes requiring textile workers to ask for soft thread, bent pins left at designated doorways, specific knock patterns learned through whispered recommendations. Reputation ledgers track successful procedures and discretion records, with community vouching systems preventing arbitrator infiltration. Underground practitioners justify their operations through theological reinterpretation, arguing that the emperor's mercy encompasses compassionate healing, that unnecessary suffering corrupts rather than purifies, and that dignified death serves imperial interests better than lobotomized servitude. These frameworks provide psychological legitimacy for former imperial medical staff operating outside official channels while maintaining spiritual coherence. Security protocols protect operations through sophisticated communication systems. Textile codes use thread colors, indicating available services, pattern arrangements, signaling operational status, and fabric samples, carrying encrypted messages between facilities. Entry requires multiple verification steps, including community vouching and demonstration of genuine medical need, rather than infiltration attempts. The Shadow System's most crucial service prevents servitorization through intercepted processing orders. When cogitator algorithms flag patients for repurpose category menial, underground networks provide alternatives. Falsified death certificates using cooled cadavers, swift euthanasia before skull-faced orderlies arrive, or hidden transportation to facilities beyond imperial reach. These interventions preserve final vestiges of humanity against systematic dehumanization. Imperial authorities classify unauthorized medical compassion as doctrinal sabotage, treating gentle procedures as spiritual corruption that compromises imperial strength through weakness propagation. The Adeptus Arbites deploy specialized task forces hunting medical heretics through surveillance networks, infiltration protocols, and systematic monitoring of unusual pain tolerance patterns in civilian populations. Underground medicine cannot scale. Ether supplies dwindle, antibiotics expire, equipment lacks proper calibration. Complications occur despite careful procedures, and practitioners maintain ledgers recording both successes and failures. Yet demand continues growing as word spreads through desperate communities, seeking alternatives to imperial therapeutic punishment. How do imperial authorities systematically identify and respond to these underground medical networks? What operational protocols do arbitrators employ when discovering major mercy-killing operations? Imperial doctrine classifies unauthorized medical compassion as spiritual corruption under Statute 66. C. Medical heresy, encompassing diversion of sacred unguents, suppression of purifying pain, and interference with repurposing protocols. The Adeptus Arbites treat pain relief as gateway corruption, viewing mercy as weakness that invites chaos infiltration through softened minds. Ecclesiastical catechisms provide moral foundation. Suffering builds imperial sinew. Comfort represents theft from the emperor's intended trials. Investigator Hadrian Vex commands Task Force Cauterize, specializing in medical heresy across 3 hive sectors. His investigation protocols identify shadow operations through systematic population monitoring. Unusual pain tolerance patterns indicating unauthorized anesthetic use. Sewerchem sensors scanning for ether markers inconsistent with official clinic usage. Power auditors tracking nocturnal current spikes around suspected facilities. Cogitator arrays cross-reference devotional attendance with medical consumption, flagging families whose suffering quotients fall below statistical norms. Infiltration networks exploit desperation within target communities. Reformed pain addicts serve as informants, trading intelligence for reduced sentences and sanctioned microampules. Families facing impossible medical choices receive offers of priority treatment in exchange for surveillance cooperation. Arbitrator agents pose as mercy dealers, documenting client networks before coordinated arrests. Microdrones disguised as servitor mites provide continuous surveillance, while human assets embed within Hablock communities. The theological framework justifies these operations through 3 doctrinal pillars. First, unauthorized healing corrupts both practitioner and patient by circumventing imperial purification protocols, creating spiritual contamination spreading through communities. Second, suffering builds character necessary for imperial service. Mercy, eliminating hardship, produces citizens incapable of proper devotion. Third, compassionate healing undermines the emperor's plan by suggesting his will includes unnecessary suffering, representing theological heresy requiring violent correction. Vex's 6-month surveillance operation has identified the sector's largest underground medical facility, a converted storage complex beneath Sector Kel's laundry district. Intelligence indicates Dr. Lyanna Voss leads operations with 12 practitioners serving 400 families monthly through the Black Lace network. The facility provides comprehensive medical heresy, anesthesia, gentle procedures, mercy killings, supported by supply chains across industrial sectors and communication systems using textile worker networks. Weeks of pattern analysis reveal network scope extending beyond individual practitioners into systematic resistance against imperial medical doctrine. Ether signatures in ventilation systems, power consumption at 146% baseline, bandage requisitions triple parish averages, linen carts following indirect routes. Confessor Malkai has drafted purification homilies. Arrest warrants read, Operation Cauterize. What happens when Investigator Vex's task force raids the largest underground medical facility in the sector? How extensive is the network of medical compassion that the arbitrators have discovered? Pre-dawn darkness shrouds Sector Kel as Investigator Vex's task force assembles in the abandoned manufactorum. 23 arbitrators check riot shields, shock mauls, and breaching charges while Confessor Malkai oversees spiritual preparations, blessing each weapon with consecrated oils. His acolytes prepare sanctified flamers for purging contaminated medical supplies. Anesthesia represents spiritual poison requiring cleansing fire. Building schematics spread across tactical tables reveal the facility's scope. 3 subterranean levels converted from textile storage, ventilation systems modified for surgical requirements, power conduits illegally tapping the main grid. Thermal imaging shows 17 heat signatures in the main surgical suite, 11 in recovery chambers, scattered movement throughout connecting corridors. At 03:47 hours, breaching charges detonate simultaneously across 4 entry points. The laundry's reinforced doors vaporize in coordinated blasts as flashbang grenades flood chambers with disorienting light and sound. Arbitrators advance through choking smoke, their synchronized movements a brutal ballet of enforcement. Steam and lint mask the scent of antiseptic as tactical teams begin systematic room-by-room clearing. The facility reveals systematic medical heresy beyond intelligence estimates. Beyond the mundane laundry facade, sterile corridors lead to surgical suites equipped with functioning anesthesia apparatus, recovery wards maintaining actual pain management protocols, and specialized chambers where families conducted final farewells with loved ones choosing dignified death over serviturization. The air carries the forgotten scent of true antiseptic rather than industrial disinfectant. Individual cots hold patients with crude but functional pain relief dispensers. Operating platforms gleam with fastidious care, salvaged instruments arranged with surgical precision. The human cost unfolds in visceral detail as panic routes itself through ventilation shafts. Patient Jorik Vass lies mid-surgery, augmetic ports half-cleaned, abandoned by fleeing practitioners when breaching charges shattered concentration. A child and her mother crawl towards ceiling grills, their muffled breathing echoing through metal ducts, before arbitrators extract them for processing. In recovery chambers, post-operative patients huddle against walls while families scatter, children's cries mixing with the systematic destruction of months of accumulated medical supplies. The discovery phase reveals network scope through meticulous documentation hidden behind false walls. Dr. Lyanna Voss maintained detailed patient records. Every procedure performed with unauthorized anesthesia, every family helped, every act of medical compassion across 6 months of operation. The registry includes 437 individuals treated with genuine care, 68 mercy killings preventing serviturization, detailed notes from families expressing gratitude for dignified endings. Cross-referenced names implicate textile workers, HAB supervisors, even parish officials in the conspiracy of medical compassion. Systematic destruction follows purification protocols. Arbitrators smash anesthesia equipment with sanctified hammers, while Confessor Malkai chants purification prayers. Glass vials shatter, sterile wraps tear, precious ether canisters puncture, their contents hissing onto grimy floors. Pain medication burns in steel drums as ecclesiarchy observers pour consecrated flame across surgical instruments. The facility's hidden medical library, texts emphasizing compassionate treatment, feeds flames consuming forbidden knowledge. Every act of mercy, every illicit comfort, transforms into ash and twisted metal. Interrogation protocols commence immediately in portable confession chambers. Dr. Voss endures enhanced questioning, designed to extract network contacts, supply sources, and theological justifications for medical heresy. She maintains silence through 12 hours of escalating pressure, protecting associates despite systematic brutality. Captured practitioners face spiritual assessment for corruption contamination, while families undergo loyalty verification. 3 days later, public executions are staged at Sector Kel's main plaza. Mandatory attendance fills the square as Confessor Malchi preaches on the sin of comfort and virtue of pain. The scaffold gleams with clean steel as names are read with administrative precision. Dr. Liana Voss faces the crowd. Wives, porters, children who once felt gentle hands hold theirs through fear, and speaks clearly enough for the voxcasters to carry. Hold their hands. If that is heresy, we are already lost. The lever drops. The crowd does not cheer. They count names chalked on walls already scheduled for washing. What happens to the families who relied on this underground medical network when their source of compassion becomes evidence? How does the community respond to the systematic elimination of medical mercy disguised as purification? Sector Kel carries the acrid scent of scorched antiseptic 3 weeks after Operation Cauterize. Welded laundry doors bear purity seals. The underground corridors remain sealed under ecclesiarchy blessing. Families who once descended those stairs now queue beneath Ward Gamma 7's flickering lumens, clutching ration chits and mandatory devotional pamphlets. The only medicine that has increased is fear. 8-year-old Mira Keller exemplifies the transition's horror. Underground practitioners managed her chronic respiratory condition with stolen analgesics and gentle breathing treatments. Imperial protocols resume with enhanced brutality. Irritant inhalants to harden lung tissue, painful chest percussion without numbing agents, deliberate discomfort designed to build character through systematic suffering. Her parents watch helplessly as she begs for the soft doctors who held her hand during procedures. Imperial Medici staff note her spiritual weakness, requiring enhanced purification protocols. Each treatment session becomes calculated torture, disguised as healing. Her small body, a testing ground for doctrinal compliance. Matron Senna Hadrian received compassionate palliative care during her decline, pain management, comfortable positioning, dignity preserved through gentle attention. Imperial resumption transforms her remaining time into sanctified agony. Purifying procedures test spiritual strength through deliberate suffering. Joint manipulation without anesthetic, pressure sore debridement while conscious, respiratory treatments designed to maximize discomfort. Her family witnesses systematic degradation replace peaceful decline. Love expressed through observing sanctified torment rather than providing comfort. Factory worker Jorik Vass's infected augmetic ports received careful cleaning under true anesthesia, wounds treated with salvaged antibiotics, procedures conducted with clinical gentleness. Imperial protocols resume with vindictive intensity. His brief taste of compassionate care marked as spiritual contamination requiring correction. Debridement cycles occur without numbing agents, while chaplains recite purification prayers. Machine oil and pus weep from crude interfaces as scalpels work conscious flesh. His screaming provides necessary feedback during 47-minute cleaning sessions timed with devotional cycles. Community psychological breakdown manifests through measurable indicators. Suicide rates increase by 37% within 6 months as families choose death over imperial medical intervention. Underground euthanasia requests spike as citizens seek swift endings rather than systematic degradation. Family-based death pacts emerge. Entire households choosing coordinated cessation when medical crises arise, preferring group termination to individual torment under imperial care. Religious coping mechanisms develop around sanctified despair as communities create spiritual frameworks transforming medical agony into worship. Families light grey candles during medical procedures, reciting prayers that reframe suffering as devotional service. Children learn catechisms emphasizing pain as communion with the emperor's sacrifice. Household shrines display medical instruments blessed by local priests, transforming tools of torment into religious relics. The ecclesiarchy provides theological infrastructure supporting medical cruelty through specialized chaplains trained in spiritual healing doctrine. These practitioners combine physical procedures with psychological conditioning, teaching patients that resistance to pain represents resistance to divine will. Confession protocols extract admissions of spiritual weakness from those who remember gentle treatment, requiring penance through additional suffering. Brief exposure to compassionate medical care makes imperial doctrine unbearable through comparison. Communities that experienced mercy recognize systematic cruelty as administrative choice rather than medical necessity, understanding that suffering serves bureaucratic rather than healing purposes. How do communities develop comprehensive spiritual frameworks to cope with medical despair when memory of compassion makes brutality unbearable? What specific religious rituals emerge to sanctify suffering and transform systematic agony into worship? The ecclesiarchy transforms imperial medical cruelty from administrative policy into religious obligation through systematic ritual frameworks that sanctify patient agony as communion with divine will. Medical chaplains arrive at Ward Gamma 7 each dawn, carrying brass censers, prayer scrolls, and ceremonial scalpels, their presence converting clinical procedures into spiritual theatre where suffering becomes currency in the emperor's ledger. The rite of purifying pain governs all major surgical interventions, requiring synchronized spiritual and physical cutting. Chaplain Mordian positions himself beside operating tables, his liturgical timing coordinating prayer cycles with scalpel strokes on conscious patients. Through flesh we find the emperor's truth, he intones as debridement begins without anesthetic. Pain purifies, suffering sanctifies, endurance elevates. Each prayer phrase corresponds to specific surgical actions: incision during invocation, tissue removal during purification verse, suturing during benediction. Patients must respond with ritual acknowledgements between screams, transforming them from passive victims into complicit participants in their own torment. The litany of flesh denial requires patient recitation throughout treatment, converting medical agony into devotional exercise. Children with chronic conditions learn these prayers before their first procedures. My body serves the throne, my pain feeds the light, my suffering strengthens the Imperium. Repetition continues regardless of procedure intensity, creating psychological conditioning that reframes systematic torture as worship. Failure to maintain recitation indicates spiritual weakness, requiring enhanced purification protocols and extended treatment cycles. The benediction of holy suffering sanctifies death under imperial medical care, ensuring mortality becomes spiritual victory rather than system failure. Dying patients receive final rites emphasizing sacrifice's value. Your pain purchases imperial strength. Your suffering sanctifies our service. Your death demonstrates devotion. Families witness these ceremonies as mandatory participants, learning that grief represents selfishness, conflicting with divine will, while children observe parents dying in sanctified agony. Medical chaplains undergo specialized training at the Schola Medicae Ecclesiasticus, learning to identify compassion corruption among patients and staff. Their curriculum combines anatomy with homily, pharmacology with confession technique, theology of pain, exegesis of corporeal weakness, sermons for the suffering. Graduates master voice control techniques, making doctrine ride patients' breath, study the placebo of promise, offering relief tomorrow so subjects endure today, and submit to weekly scourging, maintaining emotional distance from human suffering. The theological framework operates through three doctrinal pillars, justifying medical brutality as divine necessity. First, flesh represents weakness, requiring constant discipline through systematic suffering that builds imperial character. Second, the emperor's sacrifice demands reciprocal human pain, demonstrating worthiness through endurance of calculated torment. Third, comfort corrupts spiritual development, making mercy a form of damnation disguised as kindness that undermines imperial strength. Spiritual rehabilitation programs extend beyond medical procedures into comprehensive psychological reconditioning, combining physical torment with theological instruction. Patients recovering from unauthorized compassionate care undergo mercy cleansing, systematic exposure to increasing pain levels, while reciting prayers acknowledging their corruption, teaching that gentle treatment represented spiritual contamination requiring violent purification. However, resistance emerges through compassion heresy. Medical chaplains developing sympathetic responses despite conditioning. Father Voss questions whether the emperor truly requires systematic torture. Sister Hadrian provides unauthorized comfort during final rites, holding hands without catechism. These practitioners face internal investigation for theological deviation, their empathy classified as corruption requiring enhanced spiritual discipline. How does implementing these sacred torments affect the medical practitioners who must synchronize healing with systematic cruelty? What happens to medical staff who develop compassionate impulses despite their psychological conditioning? Medicae Adept Lyra Voss begins each shift with ritual ablutions designed to cleanse empathy rather than flesh. Cold water, harsh soap, and recited catechisms prepare her for systematic cruelty disguised as healing. She is the executed doctor. Liana Voss's younger sister, entering Imperial Medical Service with idealistic hopes of alleviating suffering. 7 years of conditioning have transformed her into a functionary who administers pain with clinical detachment, her compassionate impulses surgically removed through institutional brutality. Her career progression exemplifies standard imperial medical training protocols. First-year students at the Schola Progenium Medicae wing observe surgical procedures without anesthesia, learning clinical detachment through graduated exposure to human suffering. Initial reactions, nausea, tears, protective instincts, are classified as professional weakness, requiring correction through enhanced observation duties. Students who maintain empathy face remedial conditioning, extended shifts in pediatric wards, mandatory attendance at serviturization procedures, psychological evaluation for compassion contamination. Second-year training introduces active participation in systematic cruelty. Students practice debridement on conscious subjects, while chaplains monitor emotional responses. Excessive gentleness triggers disciplinary action. Hesitation during painful procedures indicates insufficient spiritual development. Career advancement requires demonstrable callousness, pain administered without flinching, suffering observed without intervention, death recorded without grief. Promotion algorithms factor cruelty coefficients alongside technical competence, rewarding practitioners for inventive applications of therapeutic punishment. Third-year students master penance calculus through specialized courses, optimal suffering ratios, prayer as pain management substitute, death timing for maximum resource efficiency. Final examinations require performing serviturization procedures, skull drilling, brain extraction, cybernetic implantation, while maintaining clinical composure. Graduates who complete this training without psychological breakdown receive full certification and assignment to civilian medical facilities. Mental health crisis among Imperial medical staff manifests through measurable indicators. Substance abuse rates reach 63% among practicing medici, with stolen analgesics providing temporary escape from mandatory cruelty. Suicide statistics show medical practitioners terminate themselves at rates triple civilian averages, often using anatomical knowledge for efficient self-destruction. The psychological strain manifests as catatonic detachment, complete emotional shutdown, rendering practitioners incapable of spontaneous human response. Underground support networks operate through coded communications among medical staff. Surgical consultation means emotional breakdown requiring peer support. Equipment maintenance indicates suicidal ideation requiring intervention. These clandestine systems provide psychological survival mechanisms. Illicit sedative trading, shared coded language for venting frustration, ritualized self-flagellation, designed to purge perceived spiritual contamination. These networks exist not to foster compassion, but to prevent complete psychological collapse while maintaining institutional compliance. Advanced rehabilitation training selects medical staff demonstrating exceptional cruelty, tolerance for specialized serviturization procedures. These practitioners learn lobotomization techniques, cybernetic integration protocols, and personality erasure methods, transforming resistant patients into mindless drones. Training occurs in secure facilities using condemned criminals as practice subjects, while instructors evaluate emotional responses. This ultimate desensitization strips away lingering vestiges of human empathy, forcing Medicaid to participate in conscious lobotomization procedures. The psychological toll creates compassion fatigue, not exhaustion from caring too much, but spiritual breakdown from being forced to care too little. Practitioners develop elaborate coping mechanisms: alcohol consumption timed to shift endings, recreational drug use, providing temporary empathy suppression, sexual practices designed to feel something beyond professional numbness. Lyra Voss exemplifies this institutional destruction. She maintains clinical efficiency while administering systematic torture, her emotional responses carefully controlled through years of conditioning. Yet traces of humanity persist: hesitation before painful procedures, brief eye contact with suffering patients, hands that tremble slightly during debridement cycles. She finds herself increasingly drawn to serviturization records, documenting pre-lobotomy humanity: faces, names, last words. This burgeoning internal conflict indicates incomplete conditioning, requiring additional spiritual discipline. What happens to medical practitioners who refuse to abandon compassion entirely despite systematic conditioning? How does the system handle medical staff who break under the pressure of enforced cruelty and begin questioning their role in systematic torture? Medical rebellion manifests through acts of humanity that imperial surveillance systems detect with mechanical precision. Despite systematic conditioning, some practitioners reach fracture points where empathy overrides institutional programming, their resistance becoming evidence for their own destruction. Senior Medici Hadrian Corvin's downfall begins with microscopic mercy, unauthorized analgesic distribution during augmetic maintenance procedures. His 20-year service record cannot protect him when cogitator audits reveal pain medication discrepancies correlating with reduced wailing coefficients in his ward. Peer surveillance reports document excessive gentleness during debridement cycles, unauthorized hand-holding during patient distress, and suspicious efficiency improvements, suggesting doctrinal deviation. The trial proceeds with administrative precision, evidence catalogued, confession extracted through enhanced interrogation, exemplary punishment administered. Corvin's serviturization occurs in the same facility where he once provided forbidden comfort, his skilled hands repurposed for mindless industrial labor. Coordinated resistance emerges in Ward Gamma 7, where surgical staff attempt systematic compassion through modified protocols. Lead surgeon Medicaid Vex establishes unauthorized anesthetic procedures, while assistants provide comfort measures beyond doctrinal limits. Their conspiracy operates for 6 weeks before internal investigation uncovers the network through patient testimony. Subjects report unusual comfort levels triggering automatic spiritual assessment protocols. Cogitator analysis reveals statistical anomalies: reduced confession volume during procedures, decreased incense consumption, improved survival rates indicating resource inefficiency. The entire team faces charges of coordinated medical heresy, their attempted kindness classified as conspiracy against imperial doctrine, requiring enhanced punishment to demonstrate institutional resolve. Medicaid adept Lyra Voss represents the most dangerous form of resistance: internal documentation of systematic dehumanization. Her servitorization duties require processing condemned subjects for lobotomization, transforming resistant humans into mindless servitors through conscious brain surgery. Standard protocol demands clinical detachment, but Voss begins recording pre-procedure humanity. Names, final words, expressions of fear, biographical fragments. Her hidden journal catalogues 317 personalities scheduled for erasure, creating detailed records of consciousness destroyed through imperial efficiency. She photographs faces before skull drilling, preserving evidence of systematic murder disguised as medical necessity. Imperial surveillance mechanisms identify compassionate practitioners through comprehensive monitoring protocols. Peer surveillance systems incentivize medical staff to report colleagues demonstrating excessive empathy, unusual procedural modifications, or statistical deviations from established cruelty baselines. Patient reporting protocols require subjects to identify practitioners providing unauthorized comfort through confession systems, offering reduced spiritual penalties for cooperation. Regular psychological assessments evaluate medical staff for compassion contamination using standardized tests, measuring appropriate callousness levels and doctrinal compliance indicators. Punishment protocols follow choreographed procedures designed to deter similar resistance while maximizing educational value. Public trials demonstrate imperial justice through systematic humiliation of fallen practitioners, their medical knowledge twisted into evidence of corruption requiring violent correction. Spiritual reconditioning attempts to restore proper cruelty through enhanced conditioning protocols. Sensory deprivation, forced recitation of suffering catechisms. Physical penances designed to purge empathetic responses while preserving technical competence. Failed reconditioning subjects undergo servitorization themselves, their expertise preserved while personality undergoes systematic erasure. Lyra Voss's documentation becomes evidence during routine quarters inspection when arbitrators discover her hidden data slate during spiritual assessment protocols. Photographs of pre-lobotomy subjects represent irrefutable proof of medical heresy. Unauthorized recording of imperial procedures. Emotional attachment to condemned subjects. Systematic documentation suggesting criticism of established protocols. Her arrest proceeds with clinical efficiency as colleagues observe her processing for the ultimate imperial cure. The irony proves instructional. The medici trained in servitorization procedures undergoes the same lobotomization she performed on others. The system's structure creates institutional inevitability. Compassionate care becomes impossible regardless of individual intentions through systematic mechanisms eliminating empathy. Career advancement requires demonstrable cruelty. Peer surveillance prevents coordinated resistance. Resource allocation algorithms deny supplies for comfort. Theological frameworks sanctify suffering as divine necessity. Individual resistance cannot overcome systemic design. The imperial medical apparatus functions as intended, transforming healing into systematic torture while eliminating practitioners who remember medicine's compassionate purpose. Why does the imperial system require medical cruelty to function at its foundational level? What does imperial medical doctrine reveal about the true nature of the Imperium itself? The shift gong echoes through Hive Tertius as another census begins in Ward Gamma 7. Jorik Vass still grips bedsheets during debridement cycles. Mira Kellor coughs through respiratory treatments designed to maximize discomfort. Matron Hess reaches again for disconnected tubes. Their requests remain constant. Release me to the Emperor's peace. We have documented this phenomenon across 12 chapters, following bodies through imperial medical apparatus, witnessing systematic transformation of healing into calculated torment. The pattern reveals itself. This is not system failure. This is system function. Imperial medical cruelty operates as foundational technology of governance, serving 4 essential functions that maintain social control through systematic dehumanization. First, Medical suffering conditions populations to accept hardship as natural law rather than administrative choice. Training citizens through pain to expect discomfort and view relief as unearned luxury. Children learn litanies through agony before learning letters, building imperial character through normalized brutality. Second, medical procedures demonstrate absolute state authority over life and death, proving imperial dominance through control of basic human dignity. Every scalpel stroke without anesthesia reinforces that citizen bodies represent imperial property, requiring maintenance rather than care. Third, systematic medical cruelty prevents compassionate social bonds that might foster resistance, forcing families into calculated abandonment decisions that fragment community solidarity while eliminating empathy as social value. Fourth, artificial medical scarcity maintains hierarchical structures through resource competition, ensuring compliance through desperation while proving imperial worth through suffering endurance. Underground networks proved this analysis through their immediate threat to imperial order. Brief exposure to compassionate medical care, anesthesia, gentle procedures, dignified death, revealed systematic cruelty as chosen policy rather than necessary hardship. Communities who experienced Dr. Lyanna Voss's forbidden mercy recognized imperial brutality as deliberate torture, understanding that suffering serves administrative rather than healing purposes. This knowledge spread like infection, requiring Operation Cauterize's violent suppression to prevent ideological contamination. Compassion became heresy because it exposed the lie that pain represents inevitable condition rather than imposed control. Economic logic reveals why humane alternatives threaten imperial foundations. Compassionate medicine would require resource allocation based on clinical need rather than productivity calculations, undermining the core principle that human value derives from service to the state. Anesthetic distribution, according to suffering rather than merit, would challenge hierarchical structures maintaining order through systematic inequality. Every pain relief dose represents resources diverted from battlefield or manufactorum, threatening the war economy that sustains imperial expansion through calculated human expenditure. Return to Ward Gamma 7 reveals rational moral calculation behind civilian death requests. Citizens correctly assess that imperial medical intervention represents systematic torture disguised as care, that survival under these conditions requires accepting dehumanization worse than cessation. Jorik's infected augmetic ports, Mira's respiratory treatments, Matron Hess's forced life support, all demonstrate imperial healing as enrollment in perpetual torment rather than restoration of health. Their choice preserves final vestiges of human dignity that imperial medicine seeks to destroy through therapeutic punishment. Serviturization represents the ultimate imperial solution, perfect synthesis of medical intervention and social control that transforms human suffering into mindless labor. Lobotomization eliminates the problem of conscious resistance while preserving productive capacity, creating biological machinery that serves without complaint or memory. Medici adept Lyra Voss's processing exemplifies this symmetry. Trained to perform conscious brain surgery on others, she underwent the same procedure when her documentation of pre-lobotomy humanity revealed compassionate contamination requiring correction. Imperial medical doctrine functions precisely as designed, transforming healing into systematic torture that conditions populations for absolute submission. The procedural creed governing this apparatus states institutional truth with clinical precision. The flesh is weak, suffering purifies, mercy corrupts, death serves. Citizens who choose death over imperial healing render clear moral judgment on imperial civilization itself. In their final choice, they preserve what systematic cruelty seeks to eliminate: the recognition that some forms of existence become worse than cessation, that human dignity requires resistance even unto death.